What a weekend. Oh my heavens. I don't think I've seen a weekend like that in college football since 2016. That weekends when Iowa beat Michigan and Washington beat USC, or no, USC beat Washington, reverse that. Pitts beat Clemson. This weekend was pure insanity. And for the first time in a very long time, I'm at a loss for words. I don't really know what to make of the state of college football right now. It is in complete disarray. I don't know who's who. This is just a big mystery box. This is like the Scooby-Doo special here. And we have a lot to talk about on this show. College football is pure bedlam, and I wouldn't prefer it any other way right now. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's session, I want to talk about Hurricane Helene and the damage that's had on the Carolinas and Appalachia and Florida. It's devastating. And if there's any way that any of y'all can help out when it comes to the reparations and helping those people in those regions of this country get back on their feet, I highly recommend it, because what's happening is devastating, and the efforts that have been put in to help these people recover from this tragedy, it's been pathetic. It's been absolutely pathetic, and I hope that it gets better here soon. But like any fund, any donation that y'all can make or invest into, I highly recommend it. I think I'm going to do it myself, because it's something that I'm really concerned about, especially now that there's another tropical storm hurricane developing in the Caribbean right now. But let's get into the craziness that happened this weekend. Alabama fell to Alabama fell to Vanderbilt. Tennessee fell to Arkansas. USC fell to Minnesota. Michigan fell to Washington. Mizzou got boat raced by A&M. And Miami and Cal was an absolute banger of a game. And so, without further ado, I've had people asking me for my opinion on this Alabama Vanderbilt game for a while. And what I'm going to tell them is I'm going to go through this once. I'm going to go through my dissection, my analysis of this game once. And that's it. Don't ask me again. You know how I feel about it. Don't ask me again. I'm going to give you my analysis here. And if you ask me, I'm going to tell you to go back to this exact video. Because there's honestly, if you're looking for something insightful, inspirational, moving, you're not going to get it here. I'm going to give you the straight, cold-cut facts, be them as they may, about this Alabama-Vanderbilt game. 40-35, final score. Vanderbilt had the ball for 43 minutes yesterday. That is one of the key Gregorian stats of the game. 43 minutes of the game. That is unbelievable. This is what happens, and I'm going to use a little Sabanism here. This is exactly what happens when the media, fans, people in general, tell you how good you are for a week, and you believe them. They tell you how great, how dazzling, how entertaining you are, and you internalize that. You believe it, and you think you're invincible. And I don't know what the mindset of the team was going into this game for Alabama, but I know what the mindset of the fan base was. Wow, we just had this masterful win over Georgia. We've got Vandy next week. Yeah, we're going to take care of them, right? No. Vanderbilt has somebody by the name of Diego Pavia. And that guy is an absolute weapon. And I remember watching him at New Mexico State last year. That dude's the real deal. He's electrifying. He idolizes Johnny Manziel, and he mimics his game. The way he moves around the fields, his accuracy, the way he is on his legs. And this is a tough task for any defense, but especially if you're Alabama's defense, who I'm going to be honest, hasn't been able to really get it together this year. I don't really know who they are. I don't think they know who they are right now. Just run through a couple stats for you. Alabama was great with situational defense last year. Third down, fourth down, Kevin Steele's defense was automatic. This year, it's Swiss cheese. Against Vanderbilt yesterday, this team cannot make stops in crucial times. Against Vanderbilt, Vandy was 12 for 18 on third down. That's pathetic. Georgia was 5 for 5 on fourth down. Not third down, fourth down. And that's right. I'm bringing that game up from last week. And I'll be honest with you. If South Florida could have been a little bit more accurate passing the ball, there would have been 2 or 3 times where Alabama's defensive backs would have been absolutely torched. They're lucky that there was some inaccuracy in that game. This defense has a lot of work to do. A lot of work. And we knew that the secondary would be a little bit thin going into this year. But this is alarming. They can't get a stop. They can't get off the field. I mean, Vanderbilt scored 40 points. Completely unloaded on this team. So there is a lot of work to be done. And this is also something when it comes to the new head coaching staff. This is a new challenge that they're going to have to face. The blowback from a loss like this. Because it is a lot different in the SEC than it is the Pac-12, or the former Pac-12, I should say. The blowback that's going to be received is going to be through the roof. And so I hope that they're ready to learn from this loss and then move on, learn lessons from it. I mean, it's going to happen. A loss is a loss. It's part of the game. You can't freak out about it. Alabama fans have this tendency to make mountains out of molehills when it comes to a loss and overreacts. And the nation loves to put Alabama on the spotlight when that happens. I mean, they think it's hilarious, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. You know, it's like when Alabama loses, America wins, that little phrase. Yeah, people love it. And so this coaching staff is going to have to, they're going to find out, and they're going to have to learn how to pivot off of a loss like this at this kinds of a stage. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's one loss. Look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame still has the most mortifying loss of any team this year, being ranked number 5 in the country and losing to Northern Illinois. It doesn't get worse than that. It's mortifying. 14 points they scored in the entire game. Look who's coming right back into the college football playoff conversation. Good old Notre Dame. So if Alabama can string together a couple of wins here, rebound, dust yourself off, you beat South Carolina next week. You go into Knoxville and beat Tennessee. It's a huge task, but it is doable. Trust me, it's very doable. Hosting Missouri, getting that win. Beating LSU, going into Baton Rouge, beating LSU. They string those 4 wins together, trust me, we were having a lot different of a conversation come the change of the month. I guarantee it. That's how the sport works. It moves very quickly, and narratives change by the week. So trust me when I say that perception is going to change. And it's different. I had this conversation with a few people last night. It is so much different when Alabama loses compared to when any other team loses in the nation, except for maybe Ohio State's, Georgia, Michigan, Notre Dame. When Alabama loses, it's like the sky is falling in, and people are attacking you from all angles. And if you're an Alabama fan, or if you're an Alabama staffer or employee, it's the same as always. Ignore it. Those people hate you because they ain't you. And I say the same for the Astros. I say the same for the Chiefs. I've said the same for the Patriots for years when they were dominant. Everybody loves to see that team fall. And so it's going to the talk of the nation. When Alabama loses, America wins. Block out the noise. Get it done against South Carolina next week. Rebound, going to Knoxville, get it done. You're 0-0 again next week. But that has to be the mindset. You can't let the remnants of a loss like this carry into the following week. It's a loss. It is what it is. You compartmentalize it, and then you move on. But this was a huge hallmark win for the Vanderbilt football program. A program that has had very little traction in the past decade. This was a monumental win, being able to beat a team like Alabama, the number one team in the country. Vanderbilt has struggled in this spot so many times in the past. They've gotten trounced in this kind of spot. And they had no fear. From the first possession, Vanderbilt had absolutely no fear. And they dialed in, and they got it done. And to them, I tip my cap. Absolutely no fear. And that's what needs. That's part of the blueprint for beating a team like Alabama. I went through the analysis of the blueprint for what it takes for a top 5 upset to happen a few weeks ago. Vanderbilt checked all the boxes. Dominated time of possession, had absolutely no fear of the opponent, and pinned Alabama into this box that's tough for them to escape out of. Alabama couldn't get stops. So Vanderbilt just keeps scoring. That puts Alabama into an even more and more anxious spot. And they did just that. And Alabama got more and more stressed and nervous and tense. And Vanderbilt capitalized off of that. Really build off of in the future. But this is... I'm at a loss for words. I mean, I couldn't have seen something like this coming in a million years. So, not only as an Alabama alum, but as a college football fan in general, like this is one that I'm still very much just absorbing that it actually happens. And it had a very, very '07 feel to it, like something that would only happen that year. And it took place yesterday. But this wasn't the only one. Let's talk about the Razorbacks and the Volunteers. You want to talk about another monumental victory for a program? This was huge for Arkansas. And I made a short about this game yesterday, and I predicted Tennessee to win, but Tennessee to win in very close fashion. I thought it would be like a 23-20 game. I knew the Razorback faithful were going to show up. There is something inexplicable about the force, the voodoo that exists in Donald W. Reynolds Stadium in beautiful Fayetteville, Arkansas. There's just something that exists there. There's this magical power that when Arkansas is hosting a team like Tennessee that's in the top 5, they just have this edge. They just have this swagger and have this magic that's on their side. I mean, look at what they did to LSU back in '07. And granted, that was in Baton Rouge. But there's something that Arkansas has in these kinds of matchups. There's a magic. And it's terrifying when you play them. But especially when you're in Fayetteville. And you have all those fans, thousands of them, sitting there doing the Woo Pig Suey chant. It's absolutely terrifying. And they can grab teams like Tennessee in their jaws and just clench them and destroy them. And that's what they did last night. So, Arkansas had come so close to victories like this year. Ever so close. The Oklahoma State game. It was so close. But they lost in overtime. The Texas A&M game. So close. But they just couldn't pull it off. And you could tell that this Arkansas team was ever so close to pulling off a massive upset. And so I thought to myself a lot yesterday, well, could this be the game? Could this be the game? And I didn't want to predict that it would happen because if it didn't, it would absolutely blow up in my face and they'd have to deal with Tennessee fans all night. And so I naturally picked Tennessee. And that kind of blew up in my face. But I've been having fun with the Arkansas fans. Today I posted another video on my YouTube channel here and on TikTok. So, go check it out. I've been having fun with the Razorback faithful. But they finally did it. I compared it Arkansas's fate this year with upsets to a batter fouling off pitches but getting really good contact. You know they're going to hit that home run at some point. Arkansas finally hit that home run. Arkansas was very injured going into this game. And on paper, it looked like Tennessee had a significantly better roster. But like I said, some things in college football, you just can't try to understand it. You just gotta respect it for what it is. And that's what a game like last night's was. Very low scoring, very defensive game. But man, I loved it. This is what college football is all about. The power of the 12th man last night. And that was the theme in so many different places last night. Nashville, Fayetteville, Minneapolis. The 12th man was so powerful last night. And it was in this Arkansas-Tennessee game. And Arkansas took full-on advantage of this. If you were to tell me before this game that Taylon Green was going to outperform Nico Iamaleava, I would have told you that you're insane. Well, he did. He outperformed him. Sometimes the inexplainable just happens. And I also want to say that I think a lot of us were too quick to crown this Tennessee team as a top 5 team in the nation. And granted, I think they have an amazing team. I think this is a bona fide playoff team. Even with this loss, like I said with Alabama, losses happen. And especially with a 12-team playoff now, you can rebound from this. You can lose one more game if you're Tennessee and still be okay. As long as you have a great resume, as long as you have other convincing wins, and as long as you show traits of a team that can advance in playoff games, you're going to be just fine. And you have the record, and especially if you're an SEC team, you can still squeak in 9-3. Tennessee can still be okay. But I think we were a little too quick to put Tennessee on a pedestal after a few wins. The NC State game, they blew the doors off of NC State, but where has NC State gone since? They've very much declined. Oklahoma's an absolute mess right now. Tennessee beat them, and they struggled to beat them. We are expecting to see something out of Tennessee's offense this year. And I think that we like to prematurely associate that with the team. This is what Tennessee's offense is going to be. And I think that it can, because there's a lot of weapons on that Tennessee offense. And I think it's only a matter of time until this thing just electrifies and takes off. It's only a matter of time before this thing accelerates. But the offense, with the exception of the NC State game against competitive teams, it's looked a little clunky. Oklahoma, optically, it was a clunky game for Tennessee. And last night was very clunky. Nico Iamaleava never really got into a rhythm. And that's something, especially before that Bama game, you got to see a little glimmer of that at Tennessee. If I'm a Tennessee fan, like I need to see a little something there before you host the Tide, because that's going to be a shootout. It's going to be an absolute shootout between those two teams, and you've got to see that. But for Arkansas, again, huge win, and they check all the boxes of the upset blueprint for a top 5 upset. They won time of possession, 35 minutes to 24. Tennessee had 8 penalties. Tennessee made a lot of mistakes, and Arkansas capitalized on it. And so there that is. Arkansas, huge victory for the program, huge victory for Sam Pittman, and I'm very happy for the Arkansas faithful. 19-14, huge win for the Hogs. This one, I had an inkling about this one. And again, I didn't want to predict it, but I had a little inkling about this one. And Minnesota actually pulled it off. Again, the 12th man in full effect. Minnesota alums have been talking about their crowd and how much more engaged they are in games when they go. The 12th man has been so much more of a factor at Minnesota football games than it's ever been. And that's why they're able to pull off an upset like this. And USC, they're starting to look more and more like a team that's struggling to acclimate to its new conference. I'm just being honest. They're looking like they're struggling to adapt to the physicality of the Big Ten. And it is a huge difference from the Pac 12. It's something that you're going to have to get used to. But these teams, they hit. And they play a very ground and pound brand of football. The Big Ten is noted for that. And USC's defensive line has been struggling with that. Michigan very much exposed USC's defensive line and ran all over them. Minnesota did the same exact thing last night. 193 yards on the grounds. There seems to be a blueprint to beating this USC team. You hit them in the mouth, and you run all over them. That seems to be the blueprint for beating USC. If you can pull that off, if you can execute that on an optimal level, you have a very good chance at beating the Trojans. And Minnesota is able to do that. And they were able to do just enough on the offensive side of the ball to secure it. It's a huge win for Minnesota for building momentum for their program. Like you saw them in the rankings, their fixture for a few years. And they kind of fell off for a little while. But this could be a huge win to propel Minnesota back into that conversation. And I'm not overreacting about USC either. I didn't have them winning the Big Ten. I don't have them in the playoff. This isn't a huge deal. I expect USC to be a 2 or a 3 loss team. It is what it is. And so I'm not really panicking about this. The only thing that I see when it comes to USC here is adapting to that physical brand of football that is very much a thing in the Big Ten. It's something that they're very much going to have to get used to. And I think that they will. Danton Lynn is a fantastic defensive coordinator. But we said this going into the season, that just teams in new conferences, there's different things you have to get used to. I mean, I think Oklahoma and Texas are going to have to get used to SEC atmospheres. I mean, it's just different. It just means more. Utah and Arizona State getting used to the climates in the Big 12. Even the same with Cincinnati and Central Florida. It's the same thing. When you join a new conference, different teams, different regions, different styles of football, there's just different elements that you have to get used to. And I think that last night was a huge wake-up call for USC, and this is a fantastic program. I have no doubt they're going to figure it out. Just like all these teams last night. Alabama, Tennessee. I'm not panicking about any of these teams. I think at the end of the day, they're all going to be just fine. But these are all very much losses. We have to look yourself in the mirror and acknowledge certain truths. All right, we had ourselves a little, and it wasn't talked about much, but we had ourselves a little national championship rematch between Michigan and Washington, and it lives up to the hype. But the team that a lot of us expected to win did not pull it off. I thought Michigan was going into a tough environment, but at the end of the day, I thought they were going to pull it off. I thought Michigan was going to win. The question becomes, how do you beat a top 10 team? You take away their biggest strength. Michigan statistically had a lot of rushing yards last night, but they were not able to completely throttle Washington with the run game like they were USC a couple weeks ago. Washington was great with controlling the tempo of the game, having control over their opponent, and keeping the momentum on their side last night. And fantastic coaching job from Jed Fish. I think he did an absolutely amazing job preparing Washington for this game. Having a set game plan and then executing and then delivering, perfecting it to an optimal level. Very, very well-coached game for Jed Fish. Huge win for him and the Washington football program. I mean, especially after they lost so many guys to the draft, to Alabama, who followed Coach DeBoer. And Jed Fish was very much stuff for the program that he, in essence, had to rebuild almost on an Auburn level. But it's been an up-and-down season for the Huskies. But this win right here was monumental. Will Rogers had a great game, the Mississippi State transfer. 21 for 31, 271 yards. I've always been a big Will Rogers guy. The guy plays a lot of heart. He plays a lot of passion. I think he has a lot of great skills, a lot of great tangible and intangible skills for a quarterback. And I was very happy. I was elated to see him have a game last night where his talents could be on full display. Very happy for the young man. Michigan, it's point blank. They're going to be vulnerable until they figure this quarterback situation out. Alex Orji, he doesn't seem to be the guy, and so it's Michigan has to very much figure the situation out. They have to have a definitive starter. They have to figure out who that is and stick with it, because right now the waters when it comes to Michigan's situation at quarterback on offense, it's very murky right now. It's very murky, and as long as it continues to be murky, it's going to be an issue for Michigan, because if you want to string together wins, you got to have clarity about your identity, about who you are at the end of the day. And if you don't have that, if you don't know who your starting quarterback is, so many of these quarterbacks try to have a two quarterback. So many of these teams try to have a two quarterback system, or are still figuring it out on week 7 who the quarterback is, and it just never works out. Is it Jack Tuttle? Is it Alex Orji? Is it Davis Warren? Michigan's got to figure it out, and until they do that, they're going to be a very average team, which is unfortunate, because a lot of the ingredients of what makes Michigan so great are still there. Amazing run game. They're great in the trenches, suffocating on defense. But that quarterback situation is going to hold them back. And I hate to see it, because I think that this is a team right now. They were just ranked number 10th in the AP poll. But this is a team that I think is underperforming. And it's all because of that quarterback situation. I think Sharon Moore's done a great job his first year. And so many components with the Michigan team has been great. That quarterback situation is going to continue to hold them back, and they haven't even played Penn State or Ohio State yet. So the L's, they're going to compile, and it's going to be something that they have to address in the offseason. But for Washington, huge win for a team that's essentially rebuilding and didn't really know what they were going to be this year. Fantastic job for the Huskies. Well, this was the one game that I picked on the air last week, and I was wrong. And I was wrong by a landslide. I just can't get these A&M picks right. I picked A&M to beat Notre Dame. They lost. I picked Missouri to beat A&M. A&M clobbers them. This was an interesting game. I mean, first and foremost, none of us really expected Connor Wegman to start. We thought he was still going to be riding the bench this week with an injury. We thought that Marcel Reed would be getting the start. But it was indeed Mr. Wegman. And I don't think Missouri was prepared for that whatsoever either. And you saw that. Their defense was not prepared for that at all. And Missouri's defense was better than it was last year. They were not prepared for what they got out of A&M offensively at all yesterday. They were clicking on all 4 cylinders. We finally got the game out of Connor Wegman that all of us had been expecting. 18 for 22, 276 yards. And this is one of those games, it was a game of momentum. And it got out of hand very quickly. Very similar to that Bama-Vanderbilt game. Like, a lot of Alabama's positive plays got called back. Same happened for Missouri. Second drive of the game, 75-yard reception for Luther Burden III from Brady Cook. Got called back. That's going to absolutely kill morale. And it did for Missouri, because they could not stop a nosebleed when it came to defense. I'm going up against Texas A&M's offense. And the more that happens, the more the defense got frazzled, and the more the offense started to panic. And you saw that very much happen yesterday. When you have a positive play and gets called back, and it happens multiple times, you're going to get in your head. And Missouri got in their head, and Texas A&M gained confidence. And the momentum just snowballed in the favor of A&M. And they just racked up the points, especially being at home, especially being in front of the 12th man. The momentum, it very much snowballed for A&M, and it was a quicksand game for Missouri. They just couldn't get themselves out. Dominant win. for A&M. I said it. This game would be massive when it comes to college football playoff implications at the end of the year, because I think that these are two teams that will still be in the hunt. Missouri, this was a game that I could have seen them losing on their schedule. I picked them to win, but I could see them dropping this game. Missouri has a very favorable schedule. I think they can still rack up a lot of wins. I believe they play UMass next week. They can still rack up a lot of wins. Of course, the Bama game I'm concerned about for them, but they have a lot of winnable games on their schedule. So I still like Missouri's odds to be SEC contenders at the end of the year, to be playoff contenders at the end of the year. But A&M is going to very much be there at the end of the day too. And this was an interesting sportsbook game as well, because like I said in this prediction video leading up to this game, a lot of sportsbooks love A&M, whether it's DraftKings, whether it's FanDuel, whether it's Caesars. They love A&M, and they don't like Missouri. Josh Pate, the great Josh Pates, fantastic podcast. If you haven't listened to his, I highly recommend it. Josh Pate's College Football Show. He did an experiment a couple weeks ago through his partnership that he has with FanDuel, and he put Missouri up against, I think it was 8 different top 25 teams, and their opponents were all favored. So Vegas does not think much about Missouri at all, and you could see why. There's a lot of weaknesses to this team, making stops on third down, capitalizing in the red zone, just being effective when it matters most. Missouri struggles with that. And when you're playing opponents that you're just far superior to, you can still pull those games off. When you're playing something like A&M, or you're playing something like Alabama, they're going to expose you. And so that's going to be Missouri's pitfall at the end of the day. Texas A&M, like I said before, 78% blue chip ratio. This is a very good team. And I think this is a win they can very much build off of. All right, the last game we're going to talk about. And this game was absolutely electric. Late night game last night. Miami beating Cal 39-38. This was College game day. I was a little puzzled at first when game day decided to go to Berkeley, California for the first time in the program's history. But they did it, and let me tell you, it was a win. Because this game was electrifying. The game day atmosphere was electrifying. The Cal crowd brought it. They had a chip on their shoulder. I loved it. This was the woke versus Coke matchup, and at the end of the day, it was Coke that prevailed. Miami is proving more and more each and every week to be a second-half team. They were against Virginia Tech, and they were in this game as well. They're very, very slow going in the first half. But the second half, they get the Pistons pumping. And Cam Ward, once again, continued to solidify his Heisman case. It's going to be an interesting race down the stretch, but Cam Ward is making a very compelling case for himself when it comes to securing that trophy this year. Cal, my God, great effort. They were well prepared for this game. They capitalized on a lot of Miami's mistakes and Miami's sluggishness on offense in the first half. They went up 35-10 at one point. This was a 25-point collapse, a 25-point comeback. It was electrifying. I can't make this stuff up for a weekend. Alabama losing to Vanderbilt. 2 top 5 teams losing. A 25-point comeback all in one weekend. I can't make this up. And this game ended at 1:30 a.m. Central Time. So if you're up on the East Coast, you're up until 2:30 a.m. watching this thing. I wish I could have done a better job with scheduling this. But man, what an electrifying watch. I mean, this you got Alabama, Georgia. This may be number 2 or number 3 this year when it comes to best college football games of the year. Fantastic game. Miami takes the cake. Cal, I think, is one of those teams that there's some real momentum with this program right now. They're not really in the picture for an ACC championship, but there's some real momentum going on because this is one of those teams that a lot of people expect them to be at the bottom of the barrel, like a Vanderbilt or like an Indiana. But that's been a theme this year, is those teams having a chip on their shoulder and proving people wrong. I love it. That's been a theme. Another theme that I want to talk about that's been very real this year. armed forces teams, both Army and Navy, are still undefeated right now. I can't make this up. We have a very realistic possibility of having a ranked unranked Army Navy game this year, and even having an armed forces team be the G5 representative in the playoff. How insane would that be? I mean, I think Boise State still. I'm not being biased. I think Boise State still looks like the best G5 team just because nobody else in the G5 has a playmaker like Ashton Chanty. Let's just face it. But it would be so cool to see an armed forces team get in the college football playoff. If Boise State doesn't make it, I would love to see that happen. That would be great. God bless the USA as always. College football is a beautiful mystery right now. I don't really know what to make of it. But I'm going to say this too. There's no team right now who's distinguishing themselves. There's no team who's really emerging as like that number one, hands down, dominant team. Like so many times in the past, the cream rises to the top. You have a team like Georgia in 22, Alabama in 2020, LSU in 2019, Clemson 2017, 2016. The cream rises to the top. And those teams are just indisputably the best teams in college football. We don't have that team right now. And if you're Texas or you're Ohio State watching this and you're like, oh, well, Brian, we're still undefeated. This can happen to you too. And I almost guarantee it will happen to you. Ohio State and Texas are not going to leave this season scot-free. And I guarantee it. They are going to drop a game. I don't know if Texas is going to lose to A&M or Oklahoma or Georgia. They're going to lose a game at some point. I don't know if Ohio State's going to lose to Penn State or Michigan again or Oregon. They're going to lose a game at some point. There's nobody who's separating themselves. There's no clear-cut elite grouping of teams right now. And I've always been somebody that, I like dynasties. I'm a fan of dynasties. I like when there's always a top team that everybody's pursuing, everybody's chasing after. But there's just something fascinating about a year like this because there's a true element of mystery. It is like 07 all over again. These upsets are going to keep happening. And there will be a point this year where that top 10 is just going to look wonky as all hell. And I'm here for it because it's new. College football is no longer bland. Like, it got bland for a while. It got stale. You knew what you were going to see. You don't know. You don't know who the confetti could be falling down on this year. You don't know who's going to be in the playoff. You don't know who's going to be in these conference championship games. It's just going to be fascinating, and I'm here for it. Something that y'all should be here for. I have a little announcement to make before we conclude here. Mr. Zeke Wager and I are doing something new tomorrow night. We're going to be going live during the Chiefs-Saints Monday Night Football game. We're going to be doing play-by-play and live reaction to the game. We've been talking about this for a while, scheming it out, and it's time to just rip the Band-Aid off and do it. Mr. Wager and I are going live. It's going to be electrifying. It's going to be riveting. It's going to be entertaining. And I highly recommend that you tune in. I'll be posting about it on socials later on and dropping the link for it. But it's going to be so much fun. We're going to be planning to do this every week. We'll pick one game that sticks out as the game of the week, whether it be like that 3:25 slot, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday night. And we're just going to go on and we're going to shoot the shit during the game. Talk about the game, talk about stories. It's just going to be a fun time, and I highly recommend that you all tune in. But thank you so much for tuning into this program tonight. It's just truly insane weekend. I had to go live for this. And I'm going to be doing this week in, week out. The first month, just to give a little update, like a little life update. The first month, doing games with the Cowboys, working in sales here. I just had to get a flow for it. I had to get a rhythm. I had to get a schedule kind of built in. But now that I have clarity with that, I'm going to be going live like this each and every single week. So there'll be consistency. Expect me at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern each and every single week. It's that time between those 3:25 games and Sunday Night Football. Obviously, if there's like a really riveting 3:25 game going on, I'll wait for that game to end before I go live on here. But nonetheless, thank you all for tuning in. It's been a great show. It was an amazing weekend. and I can't wait to see what else the season has in store for all of us. Have a great day.